Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review of the 2005 horror film Case 39. Now, this is a film that has some genuinely interesting things about it in terms of its production. This is a movie that was held back from release for quite a long time. It was completed in 2006. It didn't get a theatrical release in limited theaters overseas until I believe it was around the year 2009. And then after that, it didn't get a release in the US until 2010. So it's listed as a 2010 film, but really it's a 2006 movie. And it was slated for a release, I believe, worldwide, I think, in 2008. Yeah, it was going to have a US release in August of 2008, but it was delayed two times before it was released on October 1st of 2010. It cost about 26 million and only made 28.2 million dollars. So after all those delays, it still didn't really make a profit. So it wasn't really worth the delays. They should have just released it direct to video. But I think VOD at that time was kind of a new thing, and there's a little bit more complications involved with the VOD than there is right now, where you can just put it right on digital and then release a DVD or Blu-ray later. And the interesting aspects of the film's production don't stop there, because there was a fire on the set that completely destroyed it. And caused them to have to do some reshoots, and I probably made the budget higher. Might have been another reason why the film was delayed. Uh, and this fire happened on October 31st of 2006. Ooh. I thought that was a little spooky. That was definitely an eerie coincidence, to say the least, especially for a film that deals with this particular subject matter. So the movie's directed by Christian Alvart, the same guy who would go on to do Pandorum, and the direction in this film is divided, and by divided I mean there are elements and parts of this movie that have some really dynamic and stylish and slick direction. They're not really nightmare sequences. The hallucination scenes are a real standout. In particular, there's a sequence where one of the characters in the film, the mother of the problem child in this movie, she is led to believe that she's trapped in this massive grimy oven, and she's burning alive inside of this oven, and it's done practically, at least it looks like it, and it's a very effective sequence, despite the fact that it is a little ridiculous. Like, somebody's in a giant easy bake oven, like, you're kind of like, it's a little out there, but it works. Another sequence like that, when it comes to the hallucination scene, that is a real standout, is the scene with Bradley Cooper with the Hornets. That was a really well put together sequence. It was intense, it was unsettling, it was unnerving. Although some of the CGI in that's a little bit dated, it doesn't really. You can tell that those aren't real Hornets. But I can see why they did. I mean, you're not gonna have a real hornet come out of somebody's fucking eye, so you had to do that with digital effects. In a lot of ways, the way it was handled reminded me of a sequence in The Believers with Helen Shaver, when she's got spiders in her face. Although that one is even more unsettling, because they usually use real spiders. Just thinking about that scene is just. But the Hornet scene still gave me the heebie-jeebies, because he's pulling a hornet out of his ears, and what's pouring out of it, it's coming out of his eye, and yeah. So when it comes to those type of sequences, anything that deals with something supernatural, anything that's has some sort of action or intrigue, well done. well shot. But when it comes to sequences that just happen at the offices, at the CPS building, or inside of a home, or these sort of things, the direction is a little flat. It's understanding that it's understandable that it would be, but it just kind of feels like it's two separate movies. Like you have this slick, stylish direction with these horror scenes, and then with honestly what seems like a completely different approach to cinematography and to the lighting and then to the overall mood and atmosphere, and then these other sequences that honestly seem like they're out of an not necessarily an after school special, but they're out of like a feel good drama about a troubled child finding the right home and the right parents. It's just one of those things where, and maybe that's the intent, but I wouldn't say this is one of his best directorial efforts. I also feel that when it comes to the film's lead, Renée Zellweger, I don't feel Christian uh, really got the best performance out of her, because her performance is, in my opinion, very uneven. There are moments where it's honestly kind of laughable in terms of how she's handling this particular character. Then there's other moments where she does a good job. So I don't understand why there's such an uneven uh, path with her particular performance. I don't. Part of it might have been Christian couldn't rein her in. Didn't really. He was kind of an inexperienced. He wasn't really super inexperienced, but this is one of his first big major uh, productions with a major studio uh, and a big star. So maybe he just didn't want to butt in and try to tell her, hey, this isn't really working. Can you try something else? Or maybe he tried, but she just wasn't having any of it. I don't really know the whole story behind it, but there are some good performances by the other actors in the film. I mean, Bradley Cooper does a good job of the little role that he has, although it really isn't pretty much a nothing role. Ian McShane, he's really good as Detective Mike Barron. Uh, I even think the problem child herself, Lily, Jodelle Ferland, I thought she was definitely a standout performer. For some reason, the star just delivered the most divisive and uneven performance out of the entire cast. I don't know if that goes directly to Renee or goes to the director or whatever, but the direction, it's not great, but it's fine. I'm not going to say that overall, at the end of the day, Christian's direction was really a big problem. His direction isn't really one of the main reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of this movie and why I feel this film is at best an average time waster and at worst a below average, frustrating mishmash of different ideas and concepts that might have worked on paper but didn't really translate to the screen in the same way or the same successful capacity. And a lot of that comes down to the script by Ray Wright. I don't think it's a poor screenplay. I don't think it's a badly written story. I just think that there's a lot of different half-baked ideas. There's a lot of different things that are thrown around, and I don't think all of them really connect together and really gel. For instance, I love the fact that the lead of the film is a CPS investigator. It's a woman who works for Child Protective Services, Emily Jenkins. She's a social worker. She's assigned to investigate the family of this girl named Lilith, and she gets sucked up in this whole crazy situation as a result. And I like that aspect to the story. It's nice. It's really refreshing to see a social worker as a lead in a film like this. It's not really that common. But on the other hand, it's where the film really loses me is the supernatural stuff. And yes, some of the stuff is really strong. Like and some of the my favorite scenes in the movie have to do with the supernatural stuff. Have to deal with the hallucinations that are caused by the demon child. But you know, I think it would have been an interesting route to take if there was a more natural explanation for it, like she's drugging people and people are hallucinating, or there's like some sort of like it's some special experimental sort of drug her parents were working on or knew about. She got a hold of it, and she drugged her parents, and that's why they're fucking psycho now. And then she's using it to cause other people to have the same sort of hallucinations and do these horrific acts, and trying to blame it all on satanic stuff, or she didn't do it, the devil made them do it, that sort of thing. I think that, and yeah, it would be a little unbelievable, but it's about as believable as a demon child, so hey, why not go that route? I think having a more realistic or non-supernatural take on this kind of story would make it a much more effective film, because the supernatural stuff, at least, I guess maybe if you're gonna do it, then don't be so silly. Maybe that's another thing. Maybe it's not necessarily the fact that it's supernatural that is the problem. It's how they handle the supernatural elements. It's very helter skelter. Like, you have sequences that are effective, but then you have other sequences where you're just kind of shaking your head and you're just like, this is just ridiculous. This is just silliness. A little girl is like yelling and screaming in a demonic voice and breaking a door down. Like, it's just kind of like, what are we doing here? There's a sequence in the film where Jodelle Ferland is acting like she's Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct. It's like, what? And it's a good performance by the actress, but it just doesn't really mesh. And and the thing is, it's trying so hard to make this little girl scary, and it just doesn't work. It's a little girl. She's not scary. I don't care if gives you demon hallucinations, or she turns into a CGI demon with, sharp teeth and is screeching at you. It's not scary. The film Orphan handled this way better, because it's like, hey, it's not actually a little girl. Fooled ya. And then you're like, oh my god, like that's really smart. And it's even scarier because of, the reality of it. Yeah, I spoiled it, but fuck, most people have seen Orphan. Um, but anyway, so that's a much more effective way to handle this kind of antagonist. And then they have this wishy-washy thing where it's trying to be like, oh, but she's trying to be good. She's trying to turn a new leaf, but she's a demon child. But then it's like, no, that's actually not the case. It's more of an instance of her manipulating people, and it's all a game, and it's all part of the plan. And I honestly think it would have been interesting if it was a legitimate attempt by Lilith. Like, she's actually trying to uh, turn away from her darker urges, or her demonic uh, a part of her personality, but it just overtakes her in the end, and she can't really stop it. I think that would be a more compelling way to take things, instead of this over the top, just silly cartoon level of villainy that they really went with this particular character of Lilith. I think it would have been much more compelling, and definitely much more interesting if they went that route, like, where it's like there is some actual innocence here. Like, maybe she was a bastard child with, some group of Satanists or something, and she's part demon but also part human, and she just, this dynamic, this battle, this struggle within her that's uh causes all these problems, causes all, harm to anyone that she's around, and in a way it makes you kind of sympathize with her, but then in another way, you're like she needs to be killed because she's a terror and she's a danger to everyone around her. Uh, she needs to be destroyed for the better of humanity and also for her own sake, to save her from this torment. But no, it even could have been an interesting allegory to kids who are in a situation like this where they have mental illnesses and they are in a troubled home and they keep going from house to house in the foster system. But that nope, let's just make it cheesy, and honestly, cheesy is the right word to put it with some of the ways that they this film showcases the demon child. Instead of this cheesy approach, it could have taken a much more interesting and more balanced approach to it, and would have made the film a lot better. You could still have had the over the top hallucination stuff. That's some fun stuff. That's fine. But, if you had that dynamic and that intrigue going on, then it would make things a little bit more suspenseful. It would also make you genuinely not want the kid to die right away. Because once you figure out that the kid is a demon child and she's just an absolute irrefutable, repentant, wretched demon, then you're just like, just kill her already. I don't really care at this point now. It's all a game. Just stab her, burn her, drown her ass, do whatever. I don't really give a shit anymore. Apparently the ending, the original ending is very different than the way that the film actually ends. The original ending was much darker. It was your typical cliched horror film ending where the evil lives and goes on to the next house, and the protagonist loses, and in this instance, in the original ending, she gets arrested. And I'm honestly glad they didn't really go that route, because that would make me hate this movie. Like, I'm not even really that big of a fan of this movie, but if that was the ending, I would have been like, fuck this movie. Fuck this shit. This stupid fucking twists and just, I hate endings like that for the most part, unless they're earned. In this film's instance, I don't really think it's earned. So I thought it would, honestly, I would see it as just another cheap attempt to shock the audience. And despite my misgivings with Renée Zellweger's performance, over the course of the film, I actually grew to like her character. So that's another reason why I actually prefer the ending that they have, because she does find a way to live. She finds a way to beat the devil. She finds a way to not succumb to the darkness, and actually finds a way to shine a light on it, and in this instance drowns its ass. But at the same time, that ending is a little is pretty ridiculous too, because the film has shown, and that's another thing, there's a lot of inconsistencies with this script. So the demon child, Lilith, she can break down doors. She's extremely strong. I guess she apparently survived a fire, but she can't survive drowning. The demon, I guess water, just can't swim. The demon can't swim. It can do all these other fucking things, but it can't swim, and I guess it can't breathe underwater. But it can survive a fire. It can break down doors with a crazy amount of strength, like she's She-Hulk, but can't handle water. It's not even holy water. It's not even anything like that. So I don't understand. I don't understand how that actually stops the evil. Is it just a moment? It just temporarily stops it or something? But that's the problem. When you have a film like this, you've written yourself into a corner from the moment you start writing this screenplay, because it's a demonic presence, and you're like, well, how can we actually stop this demon and without doing another exorcism? So in this instance, you either go with the ending where the demon wins and you can't stop it, and it's always gonna, be a problem for for the rest of eternity, or you do something like that with the drowning. But that's why you didn't need to have it be the demon thing. Just have it be some kind of natural explanation for the hallucinations or something, or a little bit of sci-fi or something. I don't know. That would have been interesting. Like, it's not even actually a demon. It's an alien or something. Do like a God told me to take on it. Instead of your typical cliche demon child thing. I mean, it's kind of trying to be like Omen 4, but like it's not really the Antichrist. Um I will say this is definitely better than Omen 4, but that's not saying much at all because that movie is trash. Uh the performances by the cast, in particular, I did not mind Jodelle Ferland. This she really did go all out with this role, and in some ways, you got to give her credit. You got to give her just desserts. But at the same time, uh, it's just such a strange and just kind of it's just a silly thing. It's hard to take it seriously, despite her best efforts and her she really goes out there and plays it to the hilt, but it just doesn't really work because it's just too unbelievable. Ian McShane, though, I liked his performance as Detective Mike Barron. I wish he didn't die. I think that was cheap. uh, Bradley Cooper, he was fine, but it wasn't his role. Was pretty much it wasn't really a nothing role. It was there to have that uncomfortable, basic instinct kind of sequence where he's dealing with this little girl who all of a sudden changes her demeanor and is acting like she's a grown adult and is fucking with him, and then die by hornets. That's really all he's. Oh, he's a little bit of a love interest too for Renée Zellweger, but that's really about it. And they didn't really have much chemistry to me either. Um, Callum Keith Rennie plays Edward Sullivan. Kerry O'Malley plays Margaret. So these are the parents. They did a decent job, that's for sure. Um, and that's really the only main cast members, because they're really, I mean, there were other actors and actresses, but they got most of the screen time. The film has some interesting cinematography by Hagen Bodansky. Sometimes it works. It has a nice bit of mood and atmosphere and darkness to it, but then there's other times where it's a little bit too light, and I don't think it really works with the tone that it seems like the film is going for. And then the score by Michi Burich, I don't know what this score is. Like, it's a very uh it's not only fairly unremarkable, it's just a score that just doesn't really work with the movie. There are aspects and parts and notes to this score that are just very dissonant from the tone, and kind of stand out in a less than desirable way. Um, the editing, it's okay by Mark Goldblatt. It's definitely not some of his finest work. Although there are some scenes where the editing is honestly quite excellent, like for example, the sequences that are dealing with the hallucinations, the car wreck sequence in the climax, especially the sequences that cut back and forth between the car. It's kind of a car chase, but not really, because it's just she's just wild driving out of control. So in that sequence, I thought the editing was particularly really well done, especially how they cut things together and made it look like had the hallucination scene and made it as if Renee Zellweger is all of a sudden she's her mother, but she's looking in the rear view mirror and it's like, oh my god, I'm my mom, and on the day when she died, and So that was a good bit of editing, but I've definitely seen better works from Mark Goldblatt. This is not one of his finest hours, but then again, he did what he had to work with, and I would not be surprised if there were other editors that came in, there's other people that, or he didn't have as much time to edit it as he would have liked, or, stuff like that. Um, has a running time of 109 minutes, and because of how you aren't really drawn into the story consistently, it does drag at quite a few moments in the overall running time. It's one of those movies where there's enough going on that it keeps you interested in seeing how it's going to end, but it doesn't keep you invested, whether it's emotionally or whether it's mentally. It's one of those things where you're curious enough that you want to see how things unfold, and there are moments that keep you uh, still watching it, like the hallucination scenes, but it's a lot of it's just very intermittent. It's very, it doesn't really lock you in. So it's one of those movies where you kind of get up, you look at your watch, or you go check your phone or something, and then, oh, that's kind of creepy. All right, that's, oh shit, that's crazy. Like, what? Wow, what happened with that? Why did that happen? And then, but there's not enough consistency, because there's moments where there's just dead patches where you're just like, okay, all right, I don't really care, don't, not into this, or you're just like, that's fucking stupid. And then by the end of the movie, you're just very indifferent about it. You're just like, that was a movie I watched. I mean, that's really the best way to put this movie. It's like, there are scenes that are worth mentioning, the hallucination scenes, and there's some okay performances by some of the supporting cast members. There's some interesting concepts and potentially creepy or eerie ideas, but they're not fully fleshed out. So it's just one of those movies that at the end of the day, it's a case that you're perfectly fine with just filing away in your memory and not really revisiting it again. So anyway, I don't really know what else to say about Case 39. I talked about it a lot more than I thought I was going to. Except thanks for watching my review, and as always, I will see you later. See ya.